There was nobody there. Nobody in my row. Nobody across the aisle. Nobody even waiting in line to board. The flight attendant smiled politely, but it was the kind of smile you give when you're trying to hide how strange something feels. I looked around that nearly empty plane from Toronto to New York and thought, this doesn't make sense. Flights on this route are usually packed. Business travelers, families, tourists heading to Broadway or Times Square. There's always a crowd. But now? Just rows of empty seats and quiet engines humming through the night sky. It felt eerie, like being in a movie after the world has emptied out. Airports, once symbols of movement and energy, have turned into ghost towns. The long check-in lines, the chatter at boarding gates, even the overhead announcements echo differently when there's barely anyone there. For anyone who travels often, this feels unnatural, almost wrong. Something big is happening beneath the surface. This isn't just about one quiet flight or a slow travel day. Across North America, foreign travelers are skipping U.S. destinations, airlines are cutting routes, and airport terminals are going quiet. It's not just inconvenient, it's a warning sign. A sign that something much deeper is shifting in the global relationship with the United States. So, what's really going on here? Why are airlines pulling out, and why are travelers suddenly avoiding America? At first, people thought it was temporary, just a few canceled flights here and there. Maybe airlines were adjusting schedules or dealing with fuel costs. But by mid-2025, it became clear this wasn't a blip, it was a retreat. Foreign airlines, once desperate to expand into the U.S. market, are now backing out in waves. The world's busiest travel destination is suddenly losing traffic, and not just a little. It's collapsing. International visitor numbers have fallen off a cliff. According to recent data, arrivals to the U.S. dropped 11.6% in March alone. Western Europe is down 17%, and travel from Canada, traditionally America's biggest tourism source, is down a staggering 40% since last year. Those numbers aren't just statistics, they're a signal that something fundamental has shifted. You can see it in the airports. Gates that once served international routes are sitting quiet. Shops are closing early because foot traffic has dried up. Hotels near major tourist hubs like New York, Los Angeles, and Orlando are offering steep discounts just to fill rooms. But even that isn't working. For decades, the U.S. was the dream trip. Students wanted to study there. Families wanted to vacation there, and foreign investors saw it as the world's gateway. Now cities are losing tourists, airports are losing business, and local economies, from taxi drivers to souvenir stands, are bleeding revenue. This isn't just an airline issue. It's a full-scale economic shock, spreading from terminals to town centers. The rest of the world seems to be quietly, steadily retreating from America. And the big question is why? Why are these flights emptying out? Why are airlines giving up on one of the most lucrative markets in the world? The answer lies in the numbers. And they paint a picture of a travel industry in freefall. If you really want to understand how bad things have gotten, just look at the numbers. Because they don't just whisper a problem, they scream it. Take Play Airlines, the budget carrier from Iceland that once marketed itself as the affordable bridge between Europe and America. By October 2025, they'll completely shut down all U.S. routes, not just reduce them, but walk away entirely. Cities like Boston, Baltimore, and New York Stewart Airport will simply disappear from their network map. Then there's Air Canada, a longtime giant in North American travel. They've slashed flights to 5 major U.S. cities: Detroit, Indianapolis, Minneapolis, Nashville, and Tampa. That's over 300,000 seats gone. Why? Because nobody's booking them. In fact, advance bookings for Canada-U.S. flights have collapsed by 71 to 76% compared to last year. Think about that for a second. In 2024, Canadians bought about 1.2 million tickets to fly to the U.S. for the spring season. This year, barely 295,000. That's not a dip, it's a nosedive. And it doesn't stop there. WestJet and Flair Airlines are following the same pattern, cutting U.S. routes that once made them millions. Some are moving those planes to Mexico, Europe, and the Caribbean instead, places where demand is still booming. Even U.S. airlines themselves are feeling the pain. United Airlines CEO admitted that their Canadian traffic has dropped so sharply they've had to scale back too. It's like the whole network between the two countries is slowly unplugging. Behind every percentage point is a ripple quieter airports, hotels laying off staff, small border towns losing their main source of income. And because the travel industry touches everything, from restaurants and retail to ride shares and real estate, the damage spreads fast. This isn't just a temporary slump or a seasonal slowdown. It's structural. It's rooted in something deeper, a change in how the world views America, and the policies that have made travel there feel expensive, difficult, and honestly, unwelcoming. So, what exactly triggered this collapse? To find out, we need to look at the decisions made inside the White House and how they've reshaped how the world sees the United States. Every major shift in global travel has a cause, and in this case, it points straight to Washington. President Donald Trump's America First strategy, built on tariffs, immigration crackdowns, and nationalist rhetoric, might sound strong to some audiences at home. But abroad, it's landed like a closed door. Let's start with trade. When Trump reintroduced 25% tariffs on Canadian goods and hinted at expanding them to Europe, it didn't just hit factories and farmers. It hit travelers too. Airfares, hotel prices, and imported goods rose as a result. Suddenly, a trip to the United States cost more than ever before. For a lot of foreign visitors, that extra cost tipped the scale. Why visit New York when you could go to London or Tokyo for the same price and get a warmer welcome? Then there's immigration and border control. Under Trump's administration, border agents have become far stricter. Random phone searches, intense questioning, and stories of tourists detained for small visa issues. The message it sends? You're not really welcome here. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney called the new tariffs a direct attack, and travel forums in Europe and Asia are full of warnings about visiting the United States. Even former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau publicly encouraged Canadians to choose Canada first for travel. The tone is shifting. The United States is no longer seen as the land of opportunity. It's seen as a place full of hurdles. But the biggest impact might be emotional, not political. The America First slogan that was meant to inspire pride at home has been heard overseas as everyone else last. That perception, well, it really matters. Tourism, at its core, is about feeling welcome, about believing a place wants you there. And right now, many travelers just don't feel that way about America. The result is fewer visitors, fewer flights, and a slow but steady unraveling of one of the world's most powerful industries. And the timing couldn't be worse, because just as the United States is turning inward, two of the biggest global events in modern history are heading straight for American soil. And they could make or break the country's global image. The United States was supposed to be gearing up for its biggest tourism comeback ever. Two mega events. The 2026 FIFA World Cup and the 2028 Los Angeles Olympics were meant to flood the country with millions of visitors, billions of dollars, and global attention. Instead, they're arriving at, honestly, the worst possible time. Let's start with the World Cup. For the first time in history, it's being co-hosted by three nations: the United States, Canada, and Mexico, and America is leading with 11 host cities. From Miami to New York to Los Angeles, stadiums have been upgraded, airports expanded, and new hotels built. FIFA estimated this event could bring in $13 billion in revenue. Local economies have already poured more than $7 billion into infrastructure projects to prepare for the crowds. But what happens when those crowds never show up? With international travel to the United States falling fast, cities like Los Angeles, Miami, and Dallas are facing a harsh reality: empty seats. Hotel chains that expected to be fully booked are now cutting forecasts. Airlines that invested in new routes for fans are scaling back. For a country that prides itself on being a global stage, this isn't just an economic hit, it's a reputational one. And the irony? The United States is co-hosting with Canada and Mexico, two countries now openly frustrated with American trade and border policies. These were meant to be partners in celebration, but political tensions are threatening to overshadow the event entirely. If travelers from those neighboring countries avoid crossing the border, entire cities could miss their economic targets. Then comes the 2028 Los Angeles Olympics, another massive test. Organizers expected 250,000 international visitors, hoping to replicate the success of the 1984 Games, which famously turned a billion-dollar profit. Billions have already been spent on stadium upgrades, new rail lines, and airport expansions. But with foreign sentiment toward the United States turning cold, some economists warn these investments could backfire, leaving behind the same kind of ghostly, empty arenas that Athens was stuck with after 2004. These events were supposed to be America's moment to shine, to remind the world of its creativity, its energy, its hospitality. But if the current trends continue, they could instead highlight something darker. A nation increasingly isolated, investing billions to host a party that no one wants to attend. And, this story doesn't stop at the gates of Olympic stadiums or FIFA arenas. Because the retreat isn't just from Europe or Asia, it's starting right next door. America's closest ally, Canada, is quietly turning away. If you want proof of how deep this travel collapse runs, just look north. For decades, Canada wasn't just America's closest neighbor. It was its biggest customer. Millions of Canadians cross the border every year to shop, visit family, and vacation in Florida or New York. They filled hotels, rental cars, and theme parks. Some U.S. towns practically ran on Canadian tourism dollars. But that relationship is breaking. Fast. It started with anger over politics. When President Trump called Canada the 51st state and slapped 25% tariffs on Canadian goods, the reaction was fierce. Former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau urged citizens to travel Canadian, and current PM Mark Carney called the tariffs a direct attack. Suddenly, hashtags like Buy Canadian and Travel Local exploded across social media. The movement caught fire. Surveys show 91% of Canadians now want less dependence on the United States, and 85% are actively choosing homegrown products and destinations. The once open border has turned into a symbol of frustration and fear. Canadians have started avoiding U.S. trips altogether. A 2025 travel poll found that 36% of Canadians have canceled or plan to cancel U.S. vacations this year. In Quebec, that number jumps to 45%. Some say it's about the economy, with the exchange rate at 1.40 Canadian to $1 US. Traveling south feels like a luxury. Others say it's about dignity and safety. Canada's updated travel advisory now warns of strict U.S. border enforcement, including random phone searches and aggressive questioning. Stories of tourists being detained for minor visa mistakes have spread fast. One traveler told CBC, "I'm not risking having my phone searched or being stuck at the border. It's not worth it." And the numbers reflect that fear. Border crossings are down 35%. Canadian air arrivals have dropped 20%, and travel agencies that once specialized in U.S. vacations are reporting up to 60% fewer bookings. The economic fallout on both sides is brutal. Florida, for example, welcomed 3.3 million Canadian tourists in 2024. Now it's down by nearly a third. Duty-free stores along the border are seeing 50 to 80% revenue losses. For some small towns, that's the difference between surviving and shutting down. Airlines are adjusting to the new reality. Air Canada, WestJet, and Flair are cutting U.S. routes and adding flights to Europe, Mexico, and the Caribbean instead. People who used to fly to New York are now going to Paris or Cancun. And that shift isn't just about money, it's about emotion. Canadians aren't simply changing where they vacation. They're changing how they feel about America. This isn't just a tourism story anymore. It's a story about a friendship, an alliance, starting to fray. The border that once symbolized connection now represents distance. But Canada isn't alone. What started as one country stepping back has turned into something much bigger. Across the world, nations are rethinking their relationship with the United States. What's happening with Canada isn't an isolated story. It's the front edge of a global wave. From Europe to Asia, countries that once saw the United States as a must-visit destination are quietly backing away. Airlines, investors, even exchange students are redirecting their attention elsewhere. It's as if the world is slowly turning the page on America. The numbers make that clear. Tourism economics projects a 15% drop in international visitors to the United States in 2025, representing about $12.5 billion in lost spending, and as many as 140,000 jobs at risk across hospitality, restaurants, and service industries. Every 1% decline in global travel to the United States costs roughly $1.8 billion in revenue, and the percentages just keep stacking up. Meanwhile, other regions are booming. In Asia and the Middle East, airports are packed, new routes are launching weekly, and carriers like Emirates, Qatar Airways, and Turkish Airlines are expanding aggressively. Global aviation revenue is expected to hit $598 billion this year, but the U.S. share of that growth is lagging behind at only 2.9%. While others connect the world, America is falling behind. And this isn't just about vacations. When flights vanish, so do opportunities. Business meetings, university exchanges, cultural partnerships. Fewer planes landing in the United States means fewer foreign students, fewer business deals, and fewer cultural bridges. Tourism is soft power, and soft power builds trust. Losing that connection doesn't just hurt profits, it weakens influence. There's also the symbolic cost. For decades, visiting America was like visiting the center of the world, a place of energy, ideas, and optimism. Now, for many, it feels unpredictable, expensive, even unwelcoming. The phrase America First has, for some, started to sound like America alone. As other nations double down on openness and global cooperation, the United States seems to be drifting into isolation. And the longer this continues, the harder it will be to repair. Trust, once broken, takes years to rebuild. Routes that are cut don't return overnight. This isn't just a tourism slowdown, it's a slow disconnect from the global network that America itself helped build. But all of this leads to one critical question. Can the United States still turn things around before the world completely moves on? Empty flights, silent airports, billions lost. What began as a few canceled routes has turned into a mirror, showing America something uncomfortable about itself. The world isn't rejecting the United States for its beaches, its cities, or its landscapes. It's turning away because it no longer feels wanted. For decades, America was a magnet. It represented possibility, a place where ideas met opportunity. Tourists came not just for landmarks, but for that feeling of being in the heart of the world. But when policies, rhetoric, and rising costs tell people they don't belong, even the most loyal visitors hesitate. This collapse in travel isn't just about economics. It's a signal of reputation. When the world stops visiting you, it's often because it stopped believing in you. So, can America fix this before it's too late? Yes. But not by doubling down on walls, tariffs, or slogans. The path forward starts with something simpler: rebuilding trust. That means treating allies like partners again, not competitors. Making border crossings smoother, not scarier. Investing in diplomacy and tourism as tools of connection, not control. It means remembering that every traveler, every student, every visitor who lands on U.S. soil is a bridge to another part of the world. Reputation takes decades to build and only a few years to lose. but it can be rebuilt with openness, humility, and consistency. Imagine if the next time someone boards a flight to America, it's not an act of hesitation, but of excitement again. Because here's the truth. The planes may be empty now, but the future doesn't have to be. The world still wants to visit America, if America remembers how to welcome it.